What happens when the mind you've shared a lifetime with begins to disappear? When the person you love the most starts to fade away? What promises do you make to them? And what does it take to keep them? Today, we're sharing the story that is both heartbreaking and hopeful, exploring the courage it takes to confront a diagnosis that robs us of our memories and our identity. It's a journey into the uncharted territory of advanced dementia, where one family faced the impossible choice to live with the disease or to find a way out on their own terms. This isn't a story about giving up, it's a testament to profound love and unwavering commitment. It's about a couple's decision to face a devastating illness head on and make choices that honor the person they once were. Our guest today will share her deeply personal journey from the first subtle signs of memory loss on a European vacation to the incredibly difficult decision to pursue a path not often discussed. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I always appreciate you joining me every week. Today, I want you to help me welcome Erica Backus. She is the author of the brand new book, A Promise Kept. It is actually a New York Times bestseller, so yay. It is the story of her husband's journey with the right to die while living with dementia. So thank you for joining me, Erica.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Well, congratulations on the book. That is super exciting.
Yes, I'm excited. It launched on Tuesday, September 30th, and here we are.
Yeah, 2 days in and already on the bestseller list. I think that might be a first for my guests. So congratulations on that. Give us a little bit about your background and your husband's background and your story and how that led us to writing the book.
Well, depends how far back I go. I started out as an 8th grade English teacher. And then I left teaching and went into Silicon Valley and worked in Silicon Valley in high tech for a number of years, both in advertising and then in market research. And finally, in 1996, I started my own market research company, which was a perfect timing because the internet was just coming into the world. And I had the background in high tech. And so all of these internet companies were coming to back us research for help in finding out how consumers could use this thing called the web. I did that until I retired in 2011. And my husband worked in manufacturing, and he worked mostly in biotech and cosmetics, actually. And I met him at work when it was 1977. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was 77, 78, something like that.
Somewhere back there.
Yeah. And we got married in 1982. And so we were married for 41 magical years. And so that's my background. So teaching, research, and having my own business, which was really a fun thing to do. I love that.
Well, I like the way you jogged my memory of the early internet, because I remember one of our first websites for our family photography business. It had little tiny, like itty bitty thumbnails with no space between them. It's almost just like a grid of photographs.
Now, this isn't on the subject of the podcast, but one of the things that we were asked to do all the time when these companies were starting to build websites is, where does the search bar go?
Good night.
I mean,
bet the 3-year-olds could do that now.
We've come a long way from there.
This is true. My daughter was born in 91, so she grew up with the internet. I remember the beginning days of the internet. That makes me sound old. So you retired in 2011, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And then did exciting things like travel and all that?
Well, yeah. John and I sort of maintained sort of a structural life that was very similar to working. He had his activities. He was a gardener and he was building a train in the garage and he played golf. So he had those things that he did. And I'm a little bit of a photographer, so I worked on photography and I like to bake and cook, and so I was doing that. But I played golf also, and I exercised and went swimming. So I had all those things that were part of my life. But about once a year, we would take a major trip, and we skied. So we would go to the mountains to go skiing, and I still ski. And so, but we weren't, some people travel all the time and that's all they do, but we still had a home life and social life with friends and so on.
And what year did you start suspecting he had cognitive issues?
So it was on a trip. We were in Vienna in 2017, and uh, John was very good with the physical world, and he could read a map very easily where I couldn't, and I was always in awe how he knew how to do. But anyhow, we were trying to get back to our hotel room. You have to excuse my cat.
That's okay.
Um,
Cute kitty.
So he was trying to read the map and he was turning it. He kept turning it 90 degrees, like he was very confused about how to read the map. And I said, "Do you need help?" And he got very agitated and said, "No, no, no, I'm fine." Well, finally, I pulled out my iPhone and got the walking directions to get back to the hotel. He was extremely agitated by the whole situation. And then I realized he didn't remember what we had done the day before, and he couldn't remember the plans that I was telling him we're going to do tomorrow or the next day. And I thought, God, what is going on here? And I thought, you know what? We're on vacation. I'll worry about when I get home. We got home and he went right back to normal. Didn't exhibit any issues at all. So I thought, okay, whatever that was, it's gone. And then around 2019, so 2018 occurs and tiny little things are happening, but not much. And then 2019, you could start seeing some memory issues. And we were at the primary care doctor, and he told the doctor that I'm concerned about my memory. And so the doctor ran John through these tests that are pretty typical, count backwards from 10 and who's the president and how do you spell work backwards and those things. And he aced it.
Hmm.
Doctor said, "Well, I don't see anything wrong with you, but if you're really concerned, I'll put a referral in your chart before you can go to UCSF Aging and Memory Center." So by the end of 2019, I have a sister who's a nurse, and I expressed my concern to her, and she said, "Erica, I don't know what his problem is, but if he has Alzheimer's or the beginning of Alzheimer's, the sooner you get diagnosed, the better, because they have drugs now that can slow it down." So I repeated that conversation to John, and he said, for permission to make an appointment. And he said, "Go ahead and make the appointment." And so January 20th, 2020,
Hmm.
20, January 24th, 2020, we went to UCSF and he was diagnosed.
What a blessing you guys have that in your backyard.
Yes, yes, for sure.
The drug, it's interesting that your sister brought up the treatment drugs because they weren't FDA approved then. And I just met a gentleman yesterday who has been on Leqembi or lecanemab for 10 years. And he traveled across the country to come talk to the Alzheimer's Association and Congressman Ami Bera from, I don't know if he covers both. I think he's mostly Sacramento. I don't think he is our congressperson. He's in between us. He does a brain health forum every year, and a lot has changed from 2024 to 2025. And I did not even know that any of these drugs existed prior to 2022. So that's
He was prescribed Aricept,
okay.
which is the only drug he was on. That and he had an anti-anxiety pill they put him on.
Was that more for did he actually have anxiety or was it more for like the the symptoms of the disease,
It, it
or both?
that's such a good question because I really don't know the answer to it. I think they just assumed he was going to be anxious, and um, I didn't see any difference between his behavior with it or without it.
Interesting. It's it's come a long way with the treatments. We still have a long way to go, but it's that's why I asked that question.
So, so once he was diagnosed then in 2020, and when he was diagnosed with cognitive uh, cognitive impairment, early cognitive impairment, consistent with Alzheimer's. So it's sort of a pre-Alzheimer's diagnosis.
And this is what that gentleman yesterday was diagnosed with. And his wife, being a problem solver, found the clinical trial that got him on the drug lecanemab that he's been taking for 10 years, which again, I didn't even know 10 years ago it existed.
So, and that was to slow down Alzheimer's, and it's working.
Yes, it is designed to clear the plaque out of the brain. And I believe so. There's technically 3 drugs. I don't think they use the first one. So they have lecanemab, which is also called Leqembi, and that was the second drug that was FDA approved, and that was FDA approved in 2024, I think 2023 or 2024, probably 23. And then last year, donanemab, which is street name is Kisunla. Really wish they'd come up with better names for these things. Is also designed. It was FDA approved last year, so 24. It's supposed to clear the plaques and the tangles, so the plaque and the tau. And it seems to everybody I've talked to that's been on it is it's amazing.
Or do they start it when they were in the early stages of Alzheimer's?
Yes, it is only an early stage treatment. It's once you get too far down the road, obviously the brain is damaged and you can't reverse that. So, but for this gentleman to be on this for 10 years, he traveled across the country alone from Maine. And then he left Sacramento yesterday to go to Southern California for another talk today. And he said he was tired, which I would be tired too. And I'm probably about 15 to 20 years younger than him. So the next step, and this is what's new, is with donanemab or Kinsula. I think I'm pronouncing that right. You're on it for 18 months and then it's an infusion. And then you go on an at-home injection. So like a maintenance drug or maintenance whatever. So like I said, it's amazing how much has changed in the last 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's very hopeful. It's very hopeful.
Yeah. So, and then it's interesting also because as soon it seemed, and I'm sure this is not the case, but it seemed like as soon as we got these FDA approved drugs, like fully FDA approved, there was some like fast track approvals, and then there was like controversy and you know how the world works these days, but they are both FDA, like fully FDA approved. And they get these drugs. It's like, yay, success. We're in the era of treatments now. And they literally pivoted almost like head spinning to here's all the lifestyle choices that you need to do. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to these treatment drugs that we were so excited about? But there was a study, Pointer study. I was trying to remember that name yesterday, where they put the people on the drugs, or you don't have to be. The Pointer study was a group of people that did lifestyle changes on their own and people who had like hands-on guidance, and they wanted to see if there was differences in the cognitive improvements. And of course there was. And then one thing they discovered that was I thought was really cool, because I exercise regularly. Like I start my day with brain health activities. They found that you don't have to do aerobic exercise for cognitive benefits. Balance and stretching/mobility was just as effective for cognitive benefits as aerobic exercise. And I was like, well, yay, I do both. So
So I had asked the neurologist when John was diagnosed, I said, what is it that we can do to help the situation? She said the number one thing he can do is exercise. And she said, walk. Just go walk. Go walk. She didn't even say he had to walk fast. She said you just have to go walk.
All you have to do is get your heart rate up a little. Start breaking a sweat.
What I did was I found a trainer for him to go once a week because he was not going to do the walking.
Oh, it's too bad he didn't walk the golf course. That would have been great exercise.
Yeah, it's hard to walk a golf course.
Yeah, I live on a golf course and I see all the older people are on carts. And then there's certain times when the high school students come through. I think it's their teams, and none of them have carts. Most of them are carrying their bags. Some of them have the bags on the wheels. Like those must be the rich kids or something. But for the most part, and not only do they carry the bags, but they have enough energy to run with the golf bag. I just look out the window and go, okay, more power to you, kids. Well, it's interesting that they did say, so this was in 2020. So that it's interesting to hear your story because after hearing what I listened to yesterday at the Brain Health Forum, it's you can see more puzzle pieces being clicked together in the whole research and developments and treatments, and it's a little less hopeless than sometimes it feels like.
They had nothing else to offer him other than the Aricept, and I'm not sure.
Did they not suggest looking for a clinical trial?
Mm-mm.
Interesting. Because I know, well, let's see, the pointer, they do a lot of clinical trials at UC Davis. You know, you're in San Francisco, and I don't know what they do. I mean, there's a lot of trials that are originated in California. I wonder why. You know, I don't know if you know that Alzheimer's is the number 2 cause of death in California. Sometimes it's 3. It bounces back and forth.
That's interesting.
I think it's just heart disease that's higher, which is scary. So, I mean, so it's interesting they didn't offer that. Maybe there just wasn't one available at the time, which I think a lot of them kind of got shut down because of the pandemic. So it might not have been any benefit anyway.
I mean, I forget. Yeah, that's right. 2020 was pandemic year.
Did that cause any issues with him? I mean,
no. He spent most of his time working in the garden.
there's a lot of benefits to that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was diagnosed, and I'm assuming you guys had a conversation about what he saw the future as.
Well, when he had 2 questions for the neurology team, there were 5 doctors in the conference room for that meeting. And his 2 questions were, can I still drink alcohol? Because he didn't want to give up his wine that we have every night at dinner. And 2, how soon before I'm a vegetable?
Oof, that's a tough question.
And I was really amazed at how she answered the question because she didn't shirk at all from the question. She just took it head on and directly said, what I can tell you is that on average, you have 5 to 6 years from the time you're diagnosed. Well, I was hoping for that 5 years, but I think if you go back to 2017, we have our 5 years. We have 6 years from 2017. He died in 2023. And he was getting, now obviously he didn't die from Alzheimer's because of the path we chose. But he was at they described him as on the cusp of major neurodegenerative disease in 2023. So, but anyhow, that was the way she answered the question and her prognosis. And he wanted to know about being a vegetable because John was not going to be a person who sit in a chair in a vegetative state and stare out the window. And one of the things that I hope people will take from the book is that I urge people to talk about how do you want your life to end if you have a situation like this, where you get outside and get hit by a bus or whatever happens that is going to affect your brain, or perhaps you're paralyzed or whatever, that you talk with your family, your spouse, your partners about how you want to end your life. What are you willing to do, or what aren't you willing to do? And John and I had talked about it casually throughout our marriage. We didn't sit down and have a meeting. We talked to each other about, I don't want to live in a vegetative state. I don't want to be one of those people that's going to be brainless. And John, I had a mother who had early onset Alzheimer's, so I knew what it looked like, and I thought that I would be the one to get it. But and I said, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to live like that. So we both agreed that we did not choose that path. We didn't know what the solution would be, but we knew we didn't want that. And we would say, oh, well, we'll just get a bottle of sleeping pills, and, which is totally unrealistic. That's not a thing that you can do. And so he actually did have discussions about how could he commit suicide. I mean, we lived right near where Robin Williams lived, and we all know what he did. Yet he hung himself. He had Lewy body syndrome, which is Alzheimer's on steroids. And um, that's a very difficult and painful and miserable way to die. So we had these discussions, and what happened was, I went to a therapist when John was sick, and I just felt like I needed to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be judged, and I just wanted to tell her how scared I was. And finally, one day she said to me, I haven't read this book, but I heard there's a book out there that's good for people with Alzheimer's and caretakers. And it's called In Love by Amy Bloom. So I went home, got the book off of Amazon, and read it in a day. And Amy's Bloom is like a how-to manual. It's very different from my book. But it told me she took her husband to Dignitas in Switzerland, and he participated in an accompanied suicide. And once I read that, that was in 2022. So we're now 2 years later. That was, I think, May of 2022. Once I read that, I thought, this is the way out. But it took me 3 weeks to get up the courage to tell John about this opportunity, because, well, I had to face it first. And then I thought, if I tell him on a good day, it's going to ruin his day. I don't want to do more. And if I told him when he was having a bad day, that he wouldn't be able to process the information, because with his Alzheimer's, he would have good days and bad days. And so finally, I got the courage up and found a day that was perfect for telling him. And once I told him, his response to me was, okay, then let's do this.
Wow. Having your mom having Alzheimer's, obviously you know what that journey's like. Did you ever, like, I know that his decision to do this was hard for you. Um and it was still hard even knowing what he was trying to avoid for both of you.
Yes. Yes. And that's, I still think about it in those terms of, because I miss him terribly. And there are times where, I wish he were here. And then I tell myself, Erica, if he were here, do you realize what he would be like? Or would he even be here in my house? Would I still be able to take care of him? And so my mind goes back and forth between, we were saved from total misery. I understand that. But I miss him.
Mhm.
So
What would you say to somebody? I know some caregivers whose loved ones are at the very, very end stages, bed bound, having to be fed, all that stuff. And they're still they get they still get feedback from their loved one.
look,
And
I didn't have to deal with that. He saved me from that. I don't know what I would do in that situation. Um, I would tell him before, I had 2 years before I found Dignitas, and I would say to him, I promise you, I will never put you in an institution. I will always take care of you, regardless. And then, of course, uh, I thought, he's a big man. How am I going to take care of him? I thought, well, I'll hire help. You hire nurses that come or whatever. But I would never put him in an institution. I could never even allow myself to think of that. I just thought it would be not something I wanted to do. But I've not been in that situation, thankfully. And my heart goes out to people who are in it. It's just a very difficult thing to deal with.
that is true. My mom was in memory care the last 3 years of her life, which actually was very good for everybody. She had friends who accepted her. Being younger, because she also had early onset Alzheimer's, being on the younger end of the residence, she kind of had created her own purpose because she would always offer help to the other residents. She would like literally lean out her door and go, "If you need any help, just let me know," which always cracked me up because I thought, "Dear God, please don't." She can't help herself very well. Please don't ask her to help you because, like, oh no, no, no. And sometimes they would look at her like she was nuts, which was even funnier because I'm like, you guys are all in the same boat here. So it it was a good thing for her.
Do you want me to? Is that bothering you?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope, I'm not sure what you're referring to. So,
My phone was ringing in the other room.
nope, didn't hear it at all. So I guess everybody's journey is definitely different.
And the other thing I would say about that is, was it wasn't my choice,
Right.
and John's choice was very clear. And when I think about what he would have felt like in memory care or not knowing who I am or any of that, that would have been the worst thing I could have done to my husband.
I can see that.
That would have been it would have been the most unloving thing I could do to him. And I said to him, not for him, because he was so believed that if he didn't have a brain, he wasn't a person, and he didn't want to be here. If I can't give to other people, then I don't want to be here. And and knowing him the way I knew him, I knew he meant that. And it fit who he was perfectly. So I think that when you talk about, well, they're still communicating with me, well, are we thinking about me or are we thinking about that person? And um, John would always ask me when we decided to participate in the accompanied suicide. Every now and then he'd say to me, "Is this okay with you, Erica? Is this okay?" And I always said, "John, this is your life. It is your choice. I cannot and will not tell you what to do with it." And because I knew that if I said, "Please don't," he wouldn't. And then what? Then I have that guilt on me that he was staying alive for me. No, I couldn't do that.
That's interesting. So we don't even have death with dignity in all 50 states. I forget how many it is.
It's
11.
11 plus DC.
Okay. Hey, I remembered correctly. Yay for my brain cells. Um, and you read the book and that's how you found out about Dignitas, which is in Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Um, I don't think we need to talk about that process unless you want to talk about how, what's the right word? I guess when did he know, or when did you know that it was time to go over there?
Yes, there's a chapter in my book called Choosing the Date.
Hmm.
Um, that is one of the most stressful and traumatic parts of the whole situation, um, because I had to choose the date.
Mm.
He didn't have the mental capacity to do that. And he said to me, Erica, you know you're going to be the one that's going to have to choose the date. And I said, yeah, I know. And um, I had, there's nobody that can help you. So it turned out to be easier than I thought it would be. Although, well, first I'll tell you what happened. Um, what you want to do is you want to stretch your life out as far as you can.
Mm-hmm.
But the catch-22 is you have to prove that you have mental capacity to make this decision on your own and to not be influenced by anybody on the outside in order to pass the mental capacity test for Switzerland.
Right.
Okay, that is one of the prerequisites for getting approved.
Makes sense.
So he had to have 2 mental capacity exams in the United States before we went there, and then he had another one when we went to Switzerland. So here you are, you have to choose between, I want him to live as long as he can, but wait a minute, there's a window of opportunity. If you push it too far, you've lost that window of opportunity. And that was the struggle that I had. When he was diagnosed in April of 2023, the doctor said to me, I'm changing John's status from whatever it was to you're on the cusp of major neurodegenerative disease. That was the light bulb that went off in my head that said, okay, it's time to think about this. And that was April. And we had a lot of things planned for this spring and the summer. One of our grandsons was graduating high school in May, and we had a trip. No, we didn't have a trip. Um, we we had a lot of things that were planned, and John and I talked about it, and we agreed that I thought we had time that we could push it through the summer, and at least get these things done that we wanted to do. And so, but then you also had to fit in with Dignitas because they required a mental capacity exam 3 weeks prior to getting there. And then they needed a couple of weeks to prepare. So that was like 5 weeks. So I had 5 weeks that I had to allow for those things. And then I had these spring things that we wanted to do. So, I counted backwards and I wound up with July 26th, 2023. So that's how I did it. But afterwards, it was like, did I choose the right date? Could he have lived longer? Maybe we would have had 6 more months. And I'd say, no, we didn't have 6 more months. Well, I could have taken another week. And they'd be, okay, another week, maybe you would have lost your window. So I just did that kind of routine afterwards, which was part of the grieving.
Yeah. And with any kind of dementia causing disease, they can wake up and have a decline like from one day to the next. So even pushing it out the way you did was risky, which risky might be the.
Oh, exactly. No, I know. I have a brother-in-law who was a ER doc, and he would say to me, Erica, you need to start looking. He said, you're going to run out of time.
And so was the family all on board?
Yes.
Oh,
I
that was
was,
helpful.
oh my God, I was so fortunate. And we kept the whole thing we didn't tell people what we were doing until the very end. And then we told a small circle of our closest family, and then we extended it out a little bit. And we did not tell friends. And I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, that's I can understand why, but I'll let you explain it.
So, so, um, but when we did tell family, and there was always this, okay, how's everybody going to react? And down to the last niece and nephew, it was, we are so sorry. We love you. What could we do to help? So it was a very loving, supportive family.
Well, thank God.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their opinions. And we seem,
And that's why we kept it so secret.
yeah, because we seem to have lost the ability to be like, I don't really agree with this, but it's not my business or my life, so I'm going to keep quiet. I don't know why. I don't know why we've lost that.
Well, I felt like a man with a brain disease shouldn't have to defend his decision.
True.
I mean, I didn't want to put that on John. And I didn't have the emotional strength to ward off people who wanted to change his mind.
Yeah.
Wanted to, can I talk to John about his decision? No, you can't. And so I didn't want to deal with that.
That wouldn't have been fair to him either.
No.
You're getting more sunshine in San Francisco than we're getting up here in Sacramento.
Well, it just came out.
I don't think we have any hope. It's been raining all day, which is kind of unusual for this time of year, but not totally. But it's interesting because this is actually the best time of year in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that's why you got the sunshine. So when you told why, so you explained why you didn't tell too many friends, which that's what I assumed. What do you think how should we think about death with dignity in general, and how we can maybe loop in people with a cognitive disease like FTD or Alzheimer's, or like you said, Robin Williams had Lewy body and
Parkinson's.
oh yeah, that's right. I'm like, I know there was two of them.
Specific. What is your question, Hannah?
Well, so we only have 11 states. So what is that? Slightly more than, no, I can't do math. It's not a very big number. So it's about
like 1/5.
Yeah, I was gonna say somewhere around 20%.
Are we in more states?
Yeah, well, I understand. This is where I get frustrated. It's like, if it doesn't affect you, then butt out. But we don't seem to be doing that. We seem to be going the complete opposite direction. And I understand, religious people don't think it's right, and that's fine. We can have that discussion. Maybe not in your case, because that would be too much, but how should we help people think about this? So when my mom was in the middle-ish stages and my dad was still around, when I first started this show, I was like, we should be able to, as able-bodied, healthy people, go to a psychologist and a lawyer and be deemed in our right mind, and then lay out, when I get to XYZ. And it's
so many people are I mean, I would love to have that. Canada just passed that law.
Oh, did they really? Man, I'm a multi-generational Californian, but there are some days I'm thinking, man, Canada's starting to look really good. There's like this Instagram account where the guy refers to himself as his emotional support Canadian, and he's doing a lot of advocacy to get people in medical care, in healthcare, to move to Canada. And it's like, oh, I don't know, man. Canada's not quite as warm as we're. So I don't know. But every time I hear his pitch, it's like, well, I'm not really in healthcare, but I'm also not. So I don't know. We'll see. You never know.
I mean, see, that's the ideal solution, is when you're mentally competent, just if it's your choice, to be able to say, here's the protocol, and if I reach these different criteria, then it's time for someone to go and take me, and this is what I want to have happen. And then and of course you'd have a lawyer and doctors and all that do it, but we don't have that. And I think the American culture doesn't like to talk about death and dying.
No, we don't.
People, even with me, and I have this book that's launched, I have friends who say, I'm not sure I want to read the book because it's too heavy. It's not something I want to deal with now. Okay, I understand that. So it's a very difficult situation for the United States. And as you mentioned, people who have certain religious beliefs would find this very difficult to do. And it's a very, very personal, intimate decision that should be made between you and your family, your husband or wife or partner or whatever. Um, Now there are organizations that are working to change the laws, but right now is is not a good climate for changing laws. Well, it's
Especially right now.
more liberal laws.
Well, right now we don't even have a functioning government, so.
I compare it to the question of abortion. Like, it's my body. I should have the choice over that. Well, I think it's sort of the same idea here that this is my body. Um, so on the other side of the coin, you have the AMA who practice medicine to save people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It
goes against their training.
They take an oath that say do no harm. So now you have to define what harm is.
Yeah, because they look at it, understandably, that's the ultimate harm, and you can't fix that. So,
I mean, do you remember Dr. Kevorkian?
mm-hmm.
He went to jail.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, Dr. Kevorkian, that was back in the 60s, 1960s, I think.
I think it was in the 80s because I was born at the end of 66. So I don't remember the 60s too well.
I'm old, so 80s seem like just
80s doesn't seem as far back as it actually is for me. So yeah, no, I think he was around in the 80s too because I remember him going to jail for
he was helping people die, and he went to jail for it.
our current death with dignity laws in the 11 states in DC that allow it. I know it's also not super easy to access even here in California.
Well,
You'll have to be able to take the medication.
Yes.
Is that how it worked in Switzerland, or did they? Okay.
Take it to yourself. Yes. You have to be with the cup and drink it. Now, I don't know if they have special rules for people with, for example, ALS. I don't know. But when we had to get approved by Dignitas, that was part of the criteria. Mentally competent, and he had to be not influenced by anybody on the outside, meaning me. You had to be able to lift a cup and drink it yourself. You had to be able to swallow. You had to be able to lift the cup and drink it.
So that's interesting that it's basically the same mechanism there as it is here, or vice versa.
So the laws here are you have to be terminal.
Right.
You have a doctor to say you're going to die within 6 months, which doesn't apply to dementia.
No.
Nobody knows when you're going to die with dementia.
No, and they usually, even with the Alzheimer's Association, I like to be the outlier when they say this, is like most people, well, they say people don't die from Alzheimer's, they die with it. And I always pipe up and say, nope. My mom died from Alzheimer's. She fell and broke her leg. It was the last straw for her body. She would have been fine. Her brain was terrible. Her body was fine. She was only 77. And I made sure that her death certificate reflected that she died from Alzheimer's. And it did. It said, basically in medical terms, she died from lacking of eating and drinking. Those were the medical terms I had to look up due to advanced Alzheimer's. And the reason I did that is I wanted to make sure her death certificate was a correct historical document. Because she died at the start of the pandemic, a lot of people think that I was making sure they didn't say she had COVID or something. It's like, no. I wasn't worried about that. I don't know how they could have even, that would have been outright fraud because she never even got sick. So I just want to make sure, like, 50 years from now or 100 years from now, somebody's looking back through the family documents, they have actual correct information. So that's just crazy. I don't have any high hopes that these laws will change in the rest of our lifetimes.
I don't either. California had a sunset clause to our medical aid in dying, and it was supposed to expire this year. And the organization, oh my God, please don't let me forget the name of it. Uh, oh God, I should know this because I was working with the lady who founded it. Anyhow, they they worked on getting the California law passed through the state legislature to take away that sunset clause.
I think they put sunset clauses in as it's a mechanism to actually get it passed. So that it's like, we're having a government hissy fit over budgets and healthcare subsidies for the ACA. That lets you guys know when we're recording this. And the reason they're having a hissy fit fight over that is because the only way to get those subsidies passed was to say, oh, well, they'll end at 2025. And of course, one side wants to keep them and one side says whatever. And now we have.
I think it's a better exit is the name of the organization.
But yeah, that makes sense.
The founder of it, and she's working towards changing the laws. She took her husband to Dignitas, and when she came back, the laws have to change, and she started working on it. So I have a lot of respect for her.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do after that. I'm assuming Switzerland is a little less religious than we are. Maybe that's why it's available there. Was that your sense?
I have no sense of Switzerland other than they're extremely efficient.
Oh my, that sounds too much like I'm super efficient too, but I don't want to be necessarily efficient like
that. I will say that I worked with them the whole time. It took me 7 months to fill out all of the paperwork and give them all of the records and everything that they needed to have. And John had to write a biographical sketch, and he had to write a formal request to die. So there was a lot of communication back and forth, but it was all via email. And they were extremely responsive and very, very quick responses back. And you could ask them anything and they would respond back. But I never spoke to them on the phone.
Interesting.
I never had a personal conversation with them. The week before we went, I talked to them about the hotel reservations.
Was it a challenge to get him transported back to the States? I mean, from Switzerland to California is quite a distance.
He was cremated.
Okay.
And I had the choice of either returning his body or cremating. And he wanted to be cremated, and they took care of it there. And they sent me the ashes back to the house. I got them about 3 weeks after he died.
That reminds me of the day the mail carrier rang the doorbell. I guess she needed a signature. My mother-in-law was cremated. And I knew they were coming. I knew they were coming that day, so it wasn't a surprise. And it was like, okay, my mother-in-law died with dementia as well. And I think the mail carrier was more, I think she was a little bit more, I don't like delivering these kind of things. It's sad. But I was just like, oh, it was a box and it was kind of heavy. I was surprised. And I was like, well, I better move this before my husband gets home because it's, it's weird.
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to get him in the mail. I picked up both my parents from the funeral home. So do you have you had conversations with your family about yourself after having gone through this? Not that you have a problem, but
yeah, my sister knows. And I believe my son knows. I actually don't know that as a fact. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, well, fortunately, I get the impression that you don't have any current health issues that would require a conversation.
Not right now.
Well, that's good. Let's keep that up.
And I'm 81 years old, so who knows what's going to happen.
We could live to 103 like my paternal grandmother, and her mind was fine. She was mostly blind from glaucoma for years. And then at about 101 and a half, she became very hard of hearing. And I don't think that does the brain any favors.
No, it doesn't.
And her birthday was March 28th. She passed April 6th. So she just squeaked over to 103.
Wow.
She died right after, was it the Queen's husband, Prince, whatever his name was, Prince Philip.
Philip, yeah.
I always get the dates confused because she passed away April 6th and he passed away April 9th. So sometimes it's easy to invert the two dates, but.
Oh, 6 and 9, yeah.
Yeah. So it was, my mom was March 31st, 2020, and my grandmother was April 6th, 2021. And the dog was in between them. So it was like, poof, that was a year. That was a rough year, but not as rough as having to pick a date like you did.
It's not a normal thing to choose the day your husband will die.
No.
Is it? I thought about it a lot that when people, for example, when they have cancer and they're in the hospital and you know that you're going to die, your family comes to the hospital room or hospice if you're at home, and they can sit by your bedside and they can talk to you, and it's a very sad thing, but people know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And in our situation, neither one of us knew exactly what to expect and how this all worked. And there was no just waiting. It wasn't a natural death.
Right.
And I had to choose, which day. So it's just not normal. That's all. It's not something we grow up thinking we're going to do.
Definitely not. Everybody wants to just die in their sleep.
Everybody does, yes.
And that's what we plan for, which is why we don't plan ahead. And I like how you emphasized that you guys had conversations about the end, not necessarily how you wanted to die, but I try really hard to educate listeners and other caregivers that I talk to and stuff that and just people like me. So I'm Gen X, and start having a conversation about how you, like, we talk about what we want to do when we retire, which I know Gen X is always laugh, but we're not going to do that. But we don't talk about the what ifs. Like my mom always said, well, I don't want to be a burden, but I'm going to live in my home forever. Which always gave me a headache because it's like those are mutually exclusive. We never ever had the conversation about, okay, I thank you for not wanting to be a burden. But what happens if you can't live in your home?
And to that point, one of the things that I thought about was if John was an extremely healthy person, I can count the number of times he had a cold or the flu at 41 years on one hand. Thank goodness, it's just because he was a guy, you don't want them to be.
Yeah.
But he could have lived, his vital statistics were like a teenager, his blood pressure, his heart rate, he was extremely healthy. His brain wasn't. He could have lived for years. And I thought, what would happen if I died first and then left him, and then their kids would have had to handle the situation? And neither one of us wanted that to happen. So, I mean, I don't think I talked about that out loud, but it was something that I thought about.
It just comes back to, we have to start having conversations about how we want to live like the last dozen years of our life. And maybe some people should ask how they think they want to go.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, and I'm so excited that 2 days into your book launch that it's a bestseller. That's exciting.
It's exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.